So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing. I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. I'm Taylor Baker.
And I'm Michael Clausen. Drinking a nice summer pale ale for Doc Talk. Is it round 3?
I think it's round 3.
Round 3. We're back for more documentaries. Got a good lineup this week. 5, I believe. We
went hard in the paint.
That we did.
We also had a bit of a hiatus, so that helped us.
We did. Some documentaries. As always, we have first impressions of Steven Soderbergh's The Laundromat, as well as Edward Norton's Motherless Brooklyn. Would you like to start with one or the other?
Let's go with Motherless Brooklyn. Just start at the bottom and then get to the top.
Let's take a peek.
You're webbed up in this somehow, and these people aren't going to stop.
If you got a head just like mine, always turning things around. Some people call it a gift, but it's a brain affliction just the same.
You remember what I said?
She doesn't know. She doesn't know.
What don't I know?
All right. We just watched the trailer for Motherless Brooklyn. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Looks like a fine play. Not too enthusiastic about the film. Interesting story. Seems like it's probably a good book. Mixed on the movie.
Was it an adaptation?
I believe it's an adaptation. I think that's. I'm pretty sure.
That could be. Yeah, I had kind of gotten wind that it was a little more noir than melodrama, and now I'm getting the sense that it's maybe more so the other way around. New York period piece. I kind of like that setting, that environment. I like Edward Norton. I mean, I'm intrigued by the cast.
Great cast.
Yeah, if it hadn't gotten picked up by the New York Film Festival, I don't think I would have been as interested. I just think that they usually have pretty promising lineups. So I'm optimistic. Maybe my expectations have cooled a little bit now that I've laid eyes on it. But yeah, interesting.
Like, it's one of those things that seems like an interesting performance piece, but like I don't think I'm going to enjoy the movie so much as watching like Willem Dafoe act or Bruce Willis act or Bobby Cannavale act, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I can be a little weary sometimes of actors directing themselves.
Yes.
Sometimes that goes really well. I think Bradley Cooper pulled it off in A Star Is Born.
Also very
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Rafe Fiennes.
Yeah.
Orson Welles.
I think Ben Affleck is not so good at that.
Yeah. He's getting farther and farther away from being okay at that.
Yeah. But I don't really get the sense that it feels like a vanity project, which is a good thing, I think. So, yeah, we'll see.
On to the greatest film of the year's trailer, Steven Soderbergh's The Laundromat.
First, you must ask yourself, are you wealthy?
Simple truth of the world is that most games, for someone to win, well, someone has to lose.
Bribery, corruption, money laundering, millions and millions and millions of dollars. Somebody has to sound the alarm.
Shit. Let's...
Where the fuck is my money?
Most of the time, we don't even know.
That is the trailer for the best film of the year, The Laundromat from Steven Soderbergh and Scott Z. Burns. What do you think, Michael?
Well, I think I will have to repeat what I mentioned just before we started recording, which is that to me, just like you mentioned at one point, it looks a little bit like one of Adam McKay's more politically mindful films. To me, crossed over with something like a David O. Russell film, like American Hustle, which isn't one of the kinds of crossovers I'm particularly excited about. To me, it's a little too over the top. I prefer usually understatement to overstatement, but for the purposes of satire, that's sometimes exactly what is required. So I'm open to it. I can't say that like it's gotten me more excited than I was before.
So excited.
Right. I was already just like through the roof.
What do you... So you're comparing it to The Big Short and to, like, American Hustle.
Yeah, or some of the really kind of big scenery-chewing kind of performances. Yeah.
Why not, like, The Informant mixed with, like, some of the collage feature he used in, like, Logan Lucky?
Haven't seen The Informant.
Oh, okay.
I have not seen that one.
It's very much like the shot of Meryl Streep walking, that side shot where there's the buildings that are filled with windows. That's like the same shots that you'd see in The Informant.
Got it.
So to me, it's like, it's half Informant. It's a lot like The Informant, but then they're using that collage feature of the two bad guys.
Got it. Yeah. I almost thought of something like Erin Brockovich about, the ordinary woman speaking truth to power. Although this one being much more satirical, that one being much more kind of straightforward. Yeah. It's really like a story that I couldn't tell you much about, the Panama Papers, as an event. Like, so I'll have to, kind of like get up to speed beforehand. So I can't really like express much of an opinion on what he's doing with it. But, hard to not be excited about the cast and who's in it. So,
the fact that you can just stay at home and watch it if you'd like.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the writer is the same guy who wrote The Report, right? That's Scott Z. Burns.
I believe so, yeah.
He's got a lot coming out.
He's big at adapting events.
Yeah.
Specifically like socio-political economic events.
Yeah. We'll see.
On to Doc Talk Part 3, where we start.
Any preference?
No preference. Lead on, good sir.
Oh, how about we start with one that we had taken off the docket, Hail Satan.
Great day to be a Satanist. I believe it, and I'm very excited about it. Hail Satan! We're not what you think we are.
Satanic Temple was an idea between a handful of people directly confronting authority.
Hail Satan.
Directed by Penny Lane. That then got...
Genius title. Great branding. In order to talk about it, you already have to agree with them by hailing Satan.
With a question mark. Hail Satan?
Mm-hmm.
I like this documentary. What about you?
Yeah. I like the presentation. I think that there's room where it could have gone worse. There's room where it could have gone better. It's definitely just like a mainstream, didn't mess it up, well-edited, together doc, I guess. Like, and even that, when I say well-edited, I don't know that I mean that so much as like well-presented.
Yeah, I would agree. It never really wowed me, never really surprised me. I'm the kind of person that if you asked me beforehand what I knew about the Satanic Temple, I would not have been able to offer much. I could have told you that they endorsed Robert Eggers' The Witch, so they were okay in my book. Otherwise, I probably would have thought they were a little loony, but I wouldn't have even been able to back that up. So for me, it was no doubt informative.
So you didn't know about the issue of church and state being fought at the capitals at all in the south part of America?
Not by the Satanic Temple, no. Okay. No, most of that was new to me. I think the movie pretty clearly articulates, or allows them to articulate what they're about, what they believe in. I think most of the people that we hear speaking, I think, are pretty sympathetic folks. I think it does a good job of sort of allowing them to tell it in their own words, what they are all about.
Yeah, and dig their own graves. Or grieves.
Or grieves, right. Yeah, it's the kind of documentary that just because it is kind of like so conventional in the format that like I sometimes just feel like I'm just kind of being talked at, like I'm just kind of learning. It's just informational. There's not a lot for me to like kind of do and engage with it. But that's fine. I'm okay with, the occasional doc like this.
It kind of felt like a little bit like 60 Minutes-y. Maybe because we're not like we're hearing answers to questions, but we rarely hear Penny Lane asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like that she lets that girl who gets kicked out dig her own grave with her words, where she's like, God, what does she say? We used to stand for something, but now you can't even push the whatever, and she's calling for the assassination of the president at an organized function. What?
She got a little excited.
Well, I mean, you kind of expose that crazy people go to institutions. That's what it exposes. You know? Because that's what they're criticizing, is the bad parts of these other institutions. Yeah. And then we get to see them have their own terrible person at their own institution. Yeah, which,
in a way, that actually was a surprise, because that's after we've seen a handful of interviews with her where I thought she seemed pretty level-headed and articulate and not interested in assassinations. So I was like, wow, she is really into it. Yeah. So that was actually a decent little twist, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, for anyone who, doesn't know a thing about them and like wants to know what they're all about, I think they would probably be surprised by what they hear, given like, what anyone might presume the Satanic Temple is all about.
The TST.
Yeah, but I also wouldn't rush out to recommend it to people unless you're just, specifically interested in knowing exactly what the temple is doing.
It's an easy watch if you want to watch an easy documentary.
Yeah.
On a weeknight or whatever. It's something fine while you cook dinner.
Yeah.
You'll learn stuff. You'll get the gist. You don't need to see the whole thing to get it. I think that I do like the camera work that I saw from Penny. I think that maybe she's not that interesting of a documentarian, but maybe would be a really interesting cinematographer. She had a really good eye during like some of the speaking engagements and stuff for what she was capturing and how she was shooting. Like she had the frame exactly where it needed to be. And it's a dynamic environment where like you can't predict what's going to happen. And she was always like really well centered and perfect focus, getting Lucian and the surroundings in these moments, whether it's with the governor or whatever. Yeah, and I thought that was pretty spot on, especially the way that she shot the live streamed event of when they put the 10 Commandments back up, and he was talking into the Facebook live stream, and like how that whole interaction went, like that stuff's really hard to do in such a dynamic environment that isn't pre-planned. I think that she'd be a cool person to see the cinematography of moving forward. Yeah,
very coherently shot. I liked some of the archival footage of, when they're talking about, the Christian myths, and they're pulling clips from like, movies about Adam and Eve, and I'm wondering, what movie is this? So, whenever you show me a clip, and I'm so curious to know what could that be from.
The cartoon of the Garden of Eden?
That was one, but there was also a live action one, right? Where we see a live action version of, a woman playing Eve going to take the apple from the tree. I'm always intrigued when a clip sparks my interest, and I want to know like what the source
1950s
is.
1950s film from Hollywood.
Yeah.
That post World War II era where we had a return to our roots.
Yeah, which this Louis talks about a decent amount. Yeah. In terms of the institution itself, I think I was pretty sympathetic to the cause overall. Yeah. The only question it kind of left me with was, for so much of the documentary, they're talking about, the phrase they use is religious pluralism. That's what they're interested in defending. And at the same time, I guess I felt like if that were really true and they really saw the value in faith and everyone having a faith that everyone else can respect and, allow for,
it would be less angry.
Well, then there's no reason why anybody in the Satanic Temple might belong to a religion, right? It should be a group of people then from all different religions who are interested in respecting each other's opinions.
Liberal pluralism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's not really the case. Most of them describe themselves as some form of atheism, right? So it's really, to me, it sounds more like they're just anti-religion. They're usually talking about reason over faith and not, turning to superstition. So I wondered if there was something if maybe they need to reframe it as, because anti-religion, there might be value in that message, right?
Well, I mean, there's the other thing is there's a few different schools of atheism now. There's Christian atheism, which is just a group of people that don't believe any claims that are factual in the Bible. They just find value in the general narrative and story as they see.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, then there's like agnostic atheism. And so I think that the problem with the satanic cult is that it's directly contrarian. And in being directly contrarian, it is always going to be limited by the institution it is going to war against.
Yeah, yeah. It is kind of by definition, like, reactionary, right?
And it has to,
I think they say that. They kind of own
whatever it's criticizing.
Yeah, yeah.
In order to have any weight. It's like, in order to be a person who's a contrarian to American politics, you still have to fall in line with American political systems in order to make any progress.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I did get some laughs at times where they were kind of poking fun at Christian myths. One guy talking about, you know, Jesus wandering through the desert and the devil tempting him with water. And the devil is really just the guy saying, dude, have some water. You know, it was funny, but at the same time, like, I think it's maybe doing harm to their cause by, like, ridiculing faith to some extent when they're supposed to be, like, defenders of all kinds of faiths.
Of
yeah. That just sounds more like anti-superstition, anti-faith.
Yeah, I mean, for a large portion of this, when they're doing those interviews, like, it feels like it's just kind of a hurt feelings club. Like, I got my feelings hurt and now I'm on this team because this team's against this team. Instead of, like, having a thoughtful criticism of the religions and the value of this religion in your institution, they're just kind of self-narrating about all of the problems of the other things without any thought about their own choices.
Yeah.
And I thought that there's a certain short-sightedness that's exhibited by almost everyone that isn't Lucian.
Yeah.
But I think Lucian knows exactly what he's doing. And I think that he's a branding genius. Like, it's absolutely clever to use the word Satan and then not actually believe in Satan at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I did find him a very sympathetic figure. Not vain in any way. It didn't feel like this like I just believed everything he had to say.
Yeah, he was sincere.
Yeah, no doubt. But you know, I almost just could have used. You could always use more of this or that in any documentary. Like, any subject's probably bigger than any one documentary. But yeah, like, I'm just kind of curious about those members that you were just kind of talking about, who are probably the fringe ones. You know, who are.
You think they're fringe?
Well, you know, maybe. You know, just attracted to it for different reasons. Like,
I think most of the people that we saw attracted to this group were not exhibiting, like, normal, typical behavior. You know, like, they're somewhat atypical. They're non-conforming group to some point, and they're just going to a group that is a group of non-conforming people.
Yeah.
It's kind of like high school.
Maybe it's just that, like, once you see a Wiseman, you kind of want everything to be a little Wiseman, right? Like, you kind of want to see that whole night from start to finish where the girl does start talking about the assassination and just start to see, like, how many other people
don't want to watch that stage for that long where she's, like, pouring fake blood and there's, like...
Yeah. It's not really a problem. It's like you can always want more of one thing or another.
One interesting point was someone made a point that atheism lacks rituality, which is really important to them. And so, to them, the satanic cult was ritualism with atheism. And I thought that was interesting, because there is something to that as far as our species, like needing a ritual, needing a totem, needing some sort of community to gather around, because atheism is known as, you know, basically just a bunch of guys with their noses buried in books, like, not really... You know, it's just, there's no community to be had in atheism.
Yeah. Some of them, I think, literally describe that as, like, boring, right? Yeah. The guy with the bow tie says, like, yeah, I believe in all this. It's also just fun.
I mean, it is boring post Christopher Hitchens to be an atheist.
Yeah. I think it's a solid doc. Any other closing thoughts?
Really just hail Satan, no question. As far
there
as
you
I'm
go.
concerned.
Hail Satan.
Doing the Lord's work down there. What's the next one?
Where do you want to go? We got an array of options. Keeping people on their toes. Where are we going?
Let's go American Factory.
Where you sit today used to be a General Motors plant, and now there are over 1,000 employees working here.
Is this a union shop?
It is our desire to not be.
Let's go to the other high-budget streaming, clean-looking flick.
It is a very clean-looking flick. Very polished.
This is the first effort from the production president and first lady, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. This is their first project in their collaboration with Netflix.
I'm familiar with them.
This is about, is it you? God, it's not Huawei. What's the name of this glass company?
Fuyao.
Fuyao. It's the Fuyao Glass Company. We're in Ohio, reusing and getting American workers to make glass for a Chinese company so that they have a distribution and manufacturing center in America.
Reverse outsourcing of a kind.
So where do you want to start?
I thought it was a really interesting doc. A little bit more. Actually, I think I was about to take words from your review. Didn't you say it was part Wiseman, part something more conventional?
Yes.
Didn't you say something along those lines? Which I totally agree with, right? There is a lot of downtime where we're just in this factory watching people, with some mixture of the talking heads and interviews and that kind of thing. But I thought it was really interesting, as sort of a microcosm of culture clash and what that looks like in terms of a global economy.
Well, this is a documentary that kind of elaborates conversations we had earlier during our Chinese film episode. When I was talking about like the Americanization of China. Now we're seeing China come to America, and they've been doing this, but behind larger companies for a long time. They've been investing in the Pacific shoreline with parent companies. So, like, if you go down to Seattle and there's a company that owns land, the owner of that company, quite often, all the way down along our coastline, and then they're building the Silk Road 2.0 from Asia all the way to the southern border of Europe, if I remember correctly. So they've bought port cities and they're re-bringing them up so that they can have imperialistic dominance. So all of a sudden we're seeing a giant go from non-imperialism to total imperialism, to the point where like they're employing our disenfranchised Ohio residents. It's a fascinating documentary.
Yeah.
In that retrospect.
Yeah. To me, it felt pretty even-handed. There are times in which I feel like it's sort of leads to some admiration for how the Chinese can be so efficient in what they do, right? And we see a lot of these American factory workers also be quite impressed and just awestruck. Yeah. Also maybe a little scared. Well, at the same time, you see the safety standards start to fall, and that's scary. And I think
it. Did we ever really see safety standards that were good?
To begin with,
yeah. You say they started to fall. I don't know that they were ever in a good situation.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess it is a dangerous workplace no matter what. But, right from the very beginning, before we even get to the factory floor, there's this scene where the CEO wants a fire alarm moved, right? For aesthetic reasons. Yes. And people said it's for safety reasons. And he can barely understand the rationale for that. I think that's a very nice little clue as to, these competing values, right?
I take your fire alarm and I raise you a large garage door for the shop.
Oh, right.
Where he says it's facing the wrong direction.
Right.
What does he want it to do? He wants it to face east instead of south. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yeah. He's particularly interested in sort of the pomp and circumstance of the factory opening. He's an interesting character, no doubt.
Yes. I mean this as non-disparaging as possible. He kind of reminds me of like a Kim Jong-un character. A little bit.
There is something about the ego, is even in that scene where he says, or they say, what if it rains? And he says, it won't rain. Just thinking the world will, bend to his whims or something, is odd.
He makes a few, like, just insane claims where he's like, we don't need to worry about safety standards, like, at all. It's like, well...
Wait till someone loses an arm or something. Yeah. But then he'll say, get him out of here.
They're still going. They didn't unionize. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting to me that, like, it was Wiseman-esque, and yet, like, I don't really think of something like Monrovia as having tonal shifts, really. Like, it's kind of a singular tone in a way, because it's so kind of consistent, whereas this one, maybe it just has to do with, like, the score and kind of the combination of things, but, like, for me, it felt kind of optimistic at first, cautiously, and I think that starts to kind of dissipate a little bit as things unfold, and then I think the ending is, I don't know how I'd characterize the ending yet. I don't think I would say hopeful. I think I would say a little concerning.
I do think that you're right. I would say that Wiseman does have beats, though. And I think that, like, when I think of, like, Monrovia, Indiana, I think that the community gathering where they talk, and that one gal is, like, just overtly racist, passively. That's, like, a big beat. Another big beat is the live music where, like, no one's there. The sausage, or not the sausage, the pizza being made, the grocery store, and then getting the park bench figured out. Like, I think that Monrovia has different beats. Like, it's a pretty consistent tone, but those beats really do vary the tone.
You're right.
So we're getting different pitches. American Fact. I think that it goes back and forth between, like, the Chinese idealism and this American idealism, where they're like, there are places where they meet, but there's places where like they clearly clash, which are at the bigger things where it's like basic safety standards and the Chinese CEO having no interest in them, and then the hardworking laborers that are, I really like that relationship that built up between the older gentleman who used to work at the I think it's the Ford factory, and the Chinese man who I think he signed a 3 or 4 year contract to work and live there, and at the end we finally see his family come, and we see those photos of when he let them go shooting at his place.
Those are funny.
It's special. It's a really beautiful friendship that they developed in the place of something like fucking terrible.
There's definitely that contrast between, like, the Chinese and Americans getting to know each other that way by going to each other's houses, going fishing, versus versus they look like classes that the Chinese are, like, executives are giving to the floor managers about what Americans are.
Yes.
Some of which I don't disagree with, but
those were pretty disparaging.
One of my favorites was about how, we need encouragement. We value compliments. And the analogy he gave was like, you need to pet a donkey in the direction its hairs are already going.
Yes.
Which I thought was a very amusing analogy.
When you brought up the beginning of your point, I was like, oh, we're talking about the donkey.
It's pretty funny.
It's they don't think too highly of us.
Yeah.
It's quite apparent.
Yeah. Which, that back and forth between being kind of optimistic about the experiment working, and then that kind of thing leads me to think, like, gosh, it's just making it that much harder for these people to actually build bridges when their ideas are already planted beforehand. Which is pretty interesting. But I like that the documentary doesn't lean too far one way or the other in saying that this just isn't going to work. It's definitely not romanticized.
But I mean, I love that by the end we see everyone we've grown close to that's an American employee get laid off. And then we see the CEO being walked through, explained how robots are going to take each of these positions. I love that because it's like an honest truth of what we're looking at by 2030.
Yeah. Yeah, a nice touch in that it's forward looking, right? Yeah. It's not like end of story. It definitely
I think that is
leaves
like
a mark.
one of the things that Obama could have brought to the table is like understanding like what manufacturing looks like on a global scale moving forward. Because a lot of people that have manufacturing jobs will not.
Yeah. I'd love to get his thoughts on the doc.
Yeah. I think that
I'm going to send him a note and invite him on the show.
Normally requires a little bit of a speaking fee.
Yeah, I can imagine. Any other thoughts? This is brief.
I think that we just need to make a formal reach out to the Obama family, see if we can get their thoughts on the documentary.
I think so. I'll let you send the note.
Oh, I will. I'll send the voicemail.
Here we go. You want to visit Mr. Bob Dylan?
Let's visit Mr. Bob.
All right. Next up, Netflix documentary.
Bob always been searching for something else. I think he liked the chaos.
Focus in on that.
Your life isn't about finding yourself or finding anything. Life is about creating yourself.
Rolling Thunder Revue, a Bob Dylan story, directed by one Martin Scorsese.
Which I don't like that term. I like presented by Martin Scorsese.
Right, I'm a little unclear on his involvement in the project.
Yes, because we never hear him ask questions. We do know that questions are asked of the actual director of the archival footage. So I prefer a presents with this one. I don't know that I trust directed by.
It is strange. I don't know who's asking the questions, but it's not him, right?
No.
Which is odd.
And who is our actual cinematographer? Is it Von Braun?
Something like that. Yeah. Von something.
Maybe. He's an interesting character. I liked his interviews a lot.
Yeah.
Because he just kind of he feels kind of like a Herzog, you know, like you don't understand. Everyone else was bullshit. I was fighting against everything to give you the footage you have.
Yeah. Some colorful members of the gang, no doubt.
Yes.
I enjoyed it. I think I'm already cooling on it. I've only watched it. I watched it 12 hours ago.
You closed with it. Okay.
I did. I just watched this one last night. You watched it a little while ago, right?
I closed with the Image book. I watched this right before the Image book.
Got it. Generally speaking, like it? Not so much? Where are you at?
I think it's an interesting piece. I really don't find that much value outside of the storytelling the cinematographer / director gives us, honestly. Like, I didn't particularly care for Bob Dylan's interviews. I don't particularly care for Bob Dylan as a person. That definitely came out during this. Like, you know, he talks about himself in kind of an elitist way. Which really just rubs me the wrong way. It's very self-aggrandizing and egoistical, you know.
See, that's interesting. I think some people say the opposite, right? Like, wasn't he the one who declined the what prize was it he won recently?
The Pulitzer, right?
Was it the Pulitzer?
He won the Pulitzer or the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Yeah, for literature. Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know all the different opinions.
To refuse
it's a fair point.
A world, like, come on.
Rather than just be gracious and say thank you, and fair point.
You just pull a Glenn Close, the wife, you know.
Didn't see that one.
You didn't see that.
I did not see the wives. But yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, I guess sometimes the footage was just enough for me. I just
that's it though. It's the footage. Like, do you care for any of the interviews, really?
Not particularly.
Besides Sharon Stone's, because you're like, Sharon Stone.
Right, but like that's the one I didn't realize until afterwards was one of the like fictional parts of it, right? Like I knew going in that there was this sort of blend of fact and fiction to it. And I think I read that the Sharon Stone thing was actually not true.
Really?
Yeah, like
I listened to interviews with her where she references what she references in the doc, I thought.
Yeah, I guess I don't know well enough to know which facets of it are untrue, but I think the article I read said like the kiss thing about Bob Dylan getting the idea to wear the makeup because she was wearing the Kiss sweatshirt. That was kind of made up for the sake of the doc. So
for the sake of the doc, or because Bob Dylan wanted to fuck with people?
Maybe.
I think it's more that Bob wants to fuck with people.
Yeah, I guess like I almost feel a little phony saying I kind of liked it because I kind of feel like I maybe missed the point of what bending the truth to some of this like is for, what the purpose was.
It felt like an insincere or like pretentious version of the mystique that we got with David Bowie and Prince. You know, like it just I didn't read it as honest or like meaningful in like any real way. Like I think that he's a very interesting songwriter. I don't really care for the songs, but I think he's important to Americana and art in like that time period. But and it's impressive his tour schedule and everything. But like, you know, it's just at the end of the day, what do you really care about?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how there, you know, are kind of references to the like politics of the day, and he ultimately kind of gets involved in a certain way with that hurricane case towards the end. But otherwise, like, I'm not even really sure, like, what the documentary is aiming to do by sort of referencing, like, the time. I mean, I guess it's just kind of grounding it in the era, but it wasn't really, like, there wasn't that much of a return on
investment.
Yeah. But at the same time, I did just really like some of these sequences where we just get for an extended period of time shots of them on the bus singing as they go. The idea that people are coming and going from the tour just because it's going to work with the act. I kind of like the spirit of the group, and I think the doc kind of embodies that in its form, in that it's kind of freewheeling. It's kind of
yeah, I guess it is a collection, isn't it? Where like certain interviewers come on and then they leave, and then
that's what it felt like to me. Like I was kind of just getting swept up in the tour, and learning who was who as I went. At least that helped me accept that I don't know who a lot of these people are. Like names I'm familiar with, Joan Baez and Allen Ginsberg, but you know, otherwise I'm meeting Ramblin' Jack just when he comes on the screen and that kind of thing. So there was just kind of a vibe to it that I kind of went with, but at the same time I kind of felt like I was maybe out of the loop somehow. Maybe it's that you have to have lived through it, or you have to just be more familiar with Bob Dylan, which I'm really...
Or maybe it was more of the time and now it doesn't, you know, really work.
Yeah.
What's your favorite moment?
It's actually maybe one of the Joni Mitchell moments, where there's a song she says she wrote because she was inspired by the tour, and Bob Dylan and one other guy are playing the guitar, along with her, but she's doing the singing. It's just, I don't know where they are, some random house at some pit stop along the way. But as far as musical moments go, that was one that really just struck me as like, wow, this woman has talent. Joni Mitchell is just incredible. What about you?
Not a music moment. It's when Vaughn, I'm just going to call him Vaughn because I don't know his real name. I just know VON. It's near the end. He's shooting Bob Dylan coming off stage or getting ready to go on stage. And Bob goes up the stairs and Bob says something like kind of shitty off the cuff to him. And he says, "Can I please just ask you one question?" And Bob looks back at him with just this scathing, like, "You're an insect" look.
Ooh.
As he, like, straps his guitar on and like, starts talking to the band members. And, like, he turns back towards them, and then he peers back at Vaughn, just like, get the fuck out of here.
Mm.
And I was just like, that's the moment. Like, that's where you see, like, the myth meet the man. Where it's like, how sincere are we pretending this guy is, you know?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that one stings a little bit.
Yeah. Because and then the idea of him doing interviews for the footage that this guy got, and then talking shit about him in the interview for the like, it's just, I don't know. I really came away thinking that Bob Dylan's a piece of shit.
not a positive takeaway. Yeah. I kind of like the look they were going for. Maybe that had to do with also like my just having a good time, right?
Patina. It did.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's so fucking long. 240?
Wait, I think it's too long. I would agree. I checked my watch, no doubt. Just to see where we're at.
I pressed
but
pause
it's still.
a few times
Did
when
you?
I got some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Take a little breather.
Yeah. Have some chips.
Yeah. If I was to recommend it to someone, I might first ask them just how familiar you are with Dylan, any interest in Dylan, you know? I mean, I think that's, I don't know, I guess that's the case with any doc, but...
Do you like him at all?
Yeah.
If you don't, this won't make you.
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe if you're just more in the mood for a concert doc, you just want to see some of the footage, I would say go for that. I think it works for me as just...
steer them. Like, if they're already on Netflix, which is what they're probably on, I'd be like, so just do yourself a favor, go to search, type in FIVE space FOOT space TWO. Watch yourself some Lady Gaga.
There you go. Also a good one. For our thoughts on that, Doc Talk Part 2, I think.
So, yeah.
Otherwise, I don't think I have too many more thoughts. You?
I don't like Bob Dylan as a person. That's really all I've learned. I like Allen Ginsberg. He's eccentric and exhausting, but I love his sincerity. He's so sincere. It's like adorable how sincere he is.
I agree.
And very present in like every moment. And very repetitive. And was he the one? It was him and someone else who were like major contributors in the first part of the tour. And then they cut them in the later part of the tour. And they were hauling equipment, but they still kept a tight schedule and were working hard. And I thought that was just so commendable and really spoke to their character in a profound way. Because like they're better than me. Like I don't know that I would have done things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can't remember who that other guy was, but yeah, like that was one of the problems of just inviting other people on stage is that someone else's time is going to get cut, and yeah, he was one of them.
This is also like every band story ever, where it's just like people talking shit.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no hesitation.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for me.
That's Rolling Thunder Revue on Netflix.
Where are we going? We going to Honeyland or are we going to the Image Book?
You pick.
Let's go to the Honeyland.
Honeyland. All right. We watched this one together. Mm-hmm. It's been about a week or so.
6 days.
I really like this documentary. I think it's only improved in my head in the time that's passed since then. What about you?
It hasn't really shifted. I still haven't come to terms with it. It's an important documentary, I guess is how I would phrase it. I think that people that like documentary film should absolutely seek this out. I just don't know how to interpret the fact that it's directed by two people that are in extremely intimate moments that they clearly have an observer operant effect in. I don't know what to do about that yet. I don't know what to do about that reality TV factor.
Yeah, I think for me, it was, like, striking at first, but I've almost just come around to it in the time since we watched it. Like, there are certain shots in it that I think look to me like they were right out of a narrative feature, right? Mm-hmm. Like, when the neighbors first show up, and it's kind of a wide shot, and you see the main character we're following sort of peeking her head up over the fence, right? It just kind of has this beat of a narrative film where, like, a character's peaceful existence is suddenly disturbed or upended by, a new character entering the story. So I was just kind of struck by how the documentary seemed to be kind of like imitating a feature film in a way, in sort of how it looked and felt. And I think I've maybe come around in how it sort of has the feel of almost like a fable to me. Because I think there is just a lot to it. I think there are some really valuable kind of takeaways from it, which is something that I've never really seen the more I've thought about it, like a documentary sort of putting on the shoes of a feature to make a story out of, the material it managed to capture. And I think it just works in a lot of different ways. Like, you can kind of focus on it as a story between a daughter and her aging mother, between two neighbors, about, man and nature and the value of, like, symbiosis with nature. I think I've just found more to it in the time since we watched it.
I think that those are all great metaphors for what it is. I'll have to think about it. To me, at bottom, though, it's the story of the promised land of milk and honey. Because the cows, because the honey. The two things that make the money. And just what that does. To me, those are the underpinnings that bring those metaphors that you're talking about. Whereas, I think you can't get to milk and honey from the metaphors at first, but I'll have to think about that. But to me, it's just like, it's that biblical story, the land of milk and honey. She lives in the land of honey. She doesn't have the milk. Then they bring the milk, but so she's living in the land of honey, kind of in poverty. Then this family comes, and they do milk. And then when they start doing honey, and everything's fine at first, and there's no greed, everything's fine. And then greed comes, start harvesting too soon, kills all the honey. They literally steal her honey at one point. And then they suffer a pestilence. And it's like, it is biblical in its proportions, but I don't know what to do about those more intimate moments where these filmmakers are there, but they're not acting like they're there. It's not, the setting isn't Monrovia. Like, there's too few people for you to not have an operant observer impact here. Is my biggest problem. Like, I don't know what to do about that.
But I guess I can just assume, like, if I can just give them the benefit of the doubt that they've embedded themselves enough, they've been there long enough, they've earned their subjects' trust enough, that they can be in those situations, and people will be who they are. I mean,
but I guess that performative, right?
By the people we're seeing,
that when someone is observing you with the camera, you are no longer the same person.
Right, but I think, like, that's almost like a thing about documentaries in general, which I completely agree with. I don't know that I felt it more so here than I would have felt that in, American Background or something.
I guess maybe I just got so close to
Hatidza? Something like that. Yeah.
In some of those moments in her home with her mother, like, the intimacy that I felt. And then I realized that, like, her mom died, and, like, we're presented as if she doesn't have someone to grieve with. She has someone to grieve with. And then, like, I don't know what to do about that. Like, is she performing, or is the documentarian not helping her subject. Like how do you not like hug and comfort someone whose mother just died? Like there's some stuff that I just don't know what to do with the moments here. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah. I know you'll watch it at some point, and I would before the best of the 21st century list making begins. But yeah, you know, there are these scenes in Camera Person where she's in, you know, small, I don't know what country she's in, but she's, you know, in small villages, and she's seen something like a little kid play with an axe, right? And no one's around. It just looks like this kid is about to hurt himself. And you hear her kind of mutter under her breath, like, geez. Like, and just by hearing those little cues, you hear the documentarian not knowing what to do. What is the right thing to do? Like, is there value in like capturing the truth, or do you just always need to put humans first, right? It's hard because I think there are moments here.
You have to always put humans first,
right? That kind of seems like a no-brainer.
Essentialism, that's my basic tenet. Yeah,
that seems like a fundamental. Yeah,
limit suffering.
Yeah, I completely understand. I think it is tough, and that definitely was, I think, my initial reaction, very similar to what you're saying now. But
something changed. What exactly changed as you've had time to chew these last 6 days?
I think it's that I've just come to appreciate like the different angles from which you can look at it and get something that kind of overwhelms the like instinct I had about like how exactly did this level of intimacy be achieved. You know, like that this works is like, I was so expecting this to be something really sort of narrowly focused. Beekeeping in Macedonia. I was like, sounds interesting. I think I will probably forget about it a week later because I cannot relate. And instead, I felt like I got something that's sort of like an allegory for like environmentalism. You know, the idea that if you're kind to nature, nature will be kind to you. That patience pays dividends.
Leave half.
Yeah, right. That's the idea. If there are 4 honeycombs, you leave 2 for the bees. You take 2. You take all 4. Bees die. No one has anything.
Yep.
That's like the really simple kind of like takeaway that feels very fable-like to me, which I think is sort of fits with how it feels like a narrative feature, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that combined with the fact that you could just hone in on it as the portrait of a mother and a daughter trying to make ends meet with a really unique way of life, beekeeping, or you can see it about neighborly conflict and how, you know, it makes seeming like your neighbor having a tree in your yard, you know, seem fairly minor. That's something that's kind of universally relatable, right?
Yeah.
About, I don't know. I don't know. I think I found a lot there in the time since, while I'm still wrestling with the same things that you're talking about.
So, is this your favorite documentary of the year then?
It is, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to think about any close contender, but it's probably number 1.
Interesting. Okay.
There we go. What's up there for you? I'm forgetting.
I think I have Islam and the Future of Tolerance at number 1.
Yeah.
Which is Sam Harris, Majid Nawaz. It's basically just a live conversation where they go over the transcripts of the book that they released together. But I think I have something ahead of it, and I have the great. No, gosh, what's it called? It's the Brazil one.
Oh yeah, that's still one I want to catch up with. Edge of Democracy.
The Edge of Democracy is my number 1, actually.
That one I do want to see.
I gave Islam and the Future of Tolerance a higher rating, but I still think The Edge of Democracy is the most impressive documentary I've seen. It's basically like it navigates bias, political opinion, and a political coup that is a financial coup. expertly, and from like one person removed, she like knows the previous president of Brazil, and like watching it from that perspective, where like her parents fought were the communists fighting against the imperialist Brazilian capitalistic agenda in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and like that these people that are now in power had to meet. Oh man, it's a special documentary. It's a very special documentary. I would say it's probably comparable to this documentary.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think that they're both on equal footing. I just personally don't know what to do with that specific thing, the operant observer effect of cameras in the performative aspect of the children, of the man and the woman, and how we don't see the disciplining of the children, and then we see the intimate conversation with the children inside the trailer. It's very hard to figure out what to do.
Yeah. I remember when...
It's really well edited in retrospect, though. Like it really has a great pacing. Remember how we were talking about, like, you had a hard time with the cows dying?
Oh, yeah.
Getting the disease, and I had a hard time when I thought there was a stillborn. Mm-hmm. And when I think about it, like, that stillborn, like, that set me up for... Like, that foreshadowed and primed me in the perfect way. Like, that was really sharp editing.
Yeah.
And the way that we keep returning to the beehives where she's taking half and we see her take half. And then we see her have nothing and scooping out the dead bees. Like, it is really well edited.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes Letterboxd isn't always accurate in this regard, but I don't think they have anything else to their name. The two directors who co-directed this, I think it's pretty incredible. I mean, I think it's a pretty... Yeah, pretty well done. Edge of Democracy, definitely on my to-watch list. It might have been in that review that I think you said it just felt like the year had been kind of light on documentaries. Mm-hmm. I think I would agree. I really like this, but Minding the Gap kind of skyrocketed to the top of my list last year. And when I think about like Icarus or The Jinx, the story of Robert Durst, there's just I mean OJ, you know, like there's nothing competing. And really on the horizon that I can think of. Maybe there'll be a surprise. Armstrong. We haven't done Cold Case, Hammer Scald, but those aren't getting that notoriety. Yeah. I do actually think that Diego Madrona is a possible or Maradona contender. Yeah, Maradona, because that's the director of Amy and Sienna. Sienna won awards. Amy was personally my favorite in 2015. So promising. I think that that'll release on HBO, I think, this next month, actually. Really? I didn't know that. September 28th, I think. More to come. Yeah. Next doc. But we have more docs. Where are we going next? Godard. That's right. To the images in the books.
What's coming? A train! Are we going to ride the train? Yeah!
Orpheus has returned from the underworld. What happened on his long, long journey? Who is this man? We're talking about Jean-Luc Godard's The Image Book, streaming on Canopy for folks in the U.S.
Yes. There's one thing I learned during this documentary. You and I have excellent taste in classic film. We have moments from Johnny Guitar and we have moments from Solo. Both that we did reviewed this year on the show.
Yes, good timing. I that crossed my mind as well. A wealth of archival footage here, no doubt. I really enjoyed it. You?
Not so much. Once I hit the halfway point, I just was ready to log out.
Zoned out a little bit.
I didn't zone out, but I wanted to.
You would have liked to.
Yeah. It was like he starts with that railway one, and I'm cool with it, and then I'm just getting exhausted. Okay, how am I supposed to read this metaphor? what do you want from me, Godard?
What do you want me to do?
Why am I still watching this?
Yeah.
And I was just always waiting for a girl to get tied up to the train tracks.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't happen during the train sequence. Yeah, the stuff with trains.
You don't even know the best train moments, Godard. Shut up.
Yeah, back half was harder for me, particularly like the final third, where I feel like
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I feel like the context really kind of narrows as he kind of hones in on the Middle Eastern conflict stuff. Where I don't know, there are some names thrown out and places thrown out that like I'm just not familiar with.
So are you familiar with his criticism politically? Because I'm not. And I read a couple interviews from, I think, Ehrlich and D'Angelo, where they make overt allusion to the fact that his political beliefs about the Middle East and Muslims are extremely troubling. And I just don't know anything about that. So I don't want to make any claims, but like I know that he might have some very what would we call it? Ignorant, I guess, beliefs about people from a certain region, which he depicts in this film.
Yeah. I didn't even understand the point well enough to say whether I agree or disagree or would argue against any of it. But like, that's obviously like concerning. Like I wouldn't just want to like heap praise on it when I don't really understand like what he's getting at
exactly
there.
He's saying.
Yeah. But on a formal level, I still got a great deal out of it. More so in the first half for sure. You know, maybe it's partly to do with the color thing, right? I think color plays a pretty critical role in like what he's doing formally here.
My friend walked through while I was watching it, and it was during the ocean scene.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh my God, I've never seen an ocean so beautiful." And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking?" Like,
you're like, it's an ocean.
I think there's something special to this movie, color wise, that I didn't understand while I was watching it, I guess.
Yeah. You know, when he's kind of going back and forth between shots that are, you know, full of these really bright, saturated colors, clearly, you know, having, you know,
did he do that with
modified
Solo?
them with Solo? I don't think so, but it's interesting that Johnny Guitar is included because that also is, you know,
I remember
known for its color.
Yeah.
Really saturated red and yellow outfit on Joan Crawford.
And her eyes, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember what color her eyes were, but you can just picture them, you know?
They're like the cover of a movie. Like,
yeah. You know, so you'll have these like blinding shots of something like an ocean that are gorgeous. And then, you know, the next cut will be to a black and white film. So just kind of that range of color with some of these sort of, you know, random musings about truth in cinema and that kind of thing.
Question. What movie is the train movie?
I don't know. That did not ring a bell.
We should watch that movie.
We should look that up. I'm sure we can find out. Looks promising.
Looks really fucking good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Something about that kind of like, you know, image kind of modification. Like every image we're getting has been really tweaked in some really dramatic way, color wise, coming from the guy who said
color every time.
Well, if you at least, to me, I at least felt like so many of these images are not how I look at the world, right? They're either in black or white or these really bright, saturated colors, right? It feels unusual to me.
I thought that he was manipulating color when he was manipulating aspect ratio. He was manipulating color when he was manipulating timing. Is that true? I thought he was doing like three different things. Like I thought he was messing with timing, messing with aspect ratio, and messing with saturation, contrast, color, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was doing color during those two. I thought it was three different facets of examining pictures.
I was certainly most honed in on color, but I would not dispute that at all, that there is additionally experimentation with timing in the aspect ratio. I actually did not even realize the aspect ratio changes. Now I kind of want to I can just fast forward and see where he's doing that.
You didn't.
Maybe I was just more struck by the color.
There's no way you didn't see it.
Probably just from the nature of
Dude,
the clips.
He goes from to full. He takes something that's shot in widescreen, bumps it to full screen. It looks bad, and he lets it run for a minute, and then he bumps it back to widescreen, and it looks awesome.
Yeah,
there's no way you didn't see that.
Yeah, it was unconscious at least.
Okay, you were just so in it. I was definitely out by then.
Yeah,
when that starts happening, I was starting to log out. I think we'd already had our first Islamic terror murder by then, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is about anymore.
Yeah. I mean, something about this coming from the guy who said, photography is truth, so cinema is truth 24 times per second, suddenly giving us a movie where every image bears, the marking of its maker. It kind of feels like he maybe doesn't believe that anymore, that cinema does maybe resemble the truth, but it always, is a creation of whoever's behind the camera. So I don't know, something about that kind of nature of cinematic representation is just what I kind of cued into. But I cannot tie that in any way to the Middle East stuff in the back half. So it's one of those ones where I feel like Phoney really defending it, because I feel like that's just what I went with.
You'd have to learn French history and then learn his views and then learn what the hell he's trying to say in order to really have any understanding, right?
Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to say too much else, because for me it was pleasurable mostly as a sensory experience.
It's very much it is the closest thing to avant-garde a documentary's ever been that I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree.
But there's something, I don't know, maybe isn't it just kind of cool to have a filmmaker walk you through his favorite moments in film?
Oh, that's great.
That's why I like the first 2/3, because it's he's just picking his favorite moments and showing them to you, and you're like, yeah, there is something special here.
Yeah.
There really is something special. But he didn't include that one 46-minute short film about time travel from France. What's that shit called?
Oh, yeah, La Jetée?
Yeah, he didn't include La Jetée, and I was like, what the fuck, man?
Come on. God, how do you miss that one? Yeah, all of that in the first half, intermingled with, some of the documentary footage that sometimes is just like the girl at the train station, kids at the beach. Some of that doesn't. Well, I was about to say it doesn't feel political. I'm sure he would say it is political. But it also just feels human to me.
Yeah.
I certainly leaned more into that than other stuff.
Yeah. Maybe we'll try to see if there's an article that can shed any light on what exactly is happening, because it's David Ehrlich and I think Mike D'Angelo that made those points, and I've heard those points made earlier. I never got into Godard enough to do my research. I have a hard time thinking that a friend of Agnes Varda is going to be a morally deplorable person, but Europe is different, and Varda has a huge heart, so.
Yeah. Gotta read more.
Doc Talk Part 3?
In the can.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
That was brilliant.